Northern Dancer was a Canadian-bred thoroughbred racehorse that won the Kentucky Derby and Preakness Stakes and became the most successful sire of the 20th century. As a competitor, Blood Horse magazine ranks him as one of the top 100 U.S. thoroughbred champions of the 20th century. As a sire, the National Thoroughbred Racing Association calls him one of the most influential sires in thoroughbred history. A bay stallion, Northern Dancer was sired by Nearctic through the mare Natalma, whose sire was Native Dancer. Northern Dancer's grandsire was the English-based horse Nearco, two-time British Isles Sire of the Year. In 1952, Edward P. Taylor, Canadian business magnate and owner of Windfields Farm, attended the December sale at Newmarket, England, where he purchased the Irish dam Lady Angela, a daughter of six-time British Isles Sire of the Year Hyperion. In 1953, Taylor had Lady Angela bred to Nearco before bringing her to his farm in Canada, where she foaled Nearctic in early 1954. Nearctic was Canadian Horse of the Year in 1958, a feat that Northern Dancer would match in 1964. Despite his strong pedigree, Northern Dancer was a diminutive horse and did not find a buyer at his $25,000 reserve price at the yearling sales. As a result, Northern Dancer stayed in the Windfields Farm racing stable a year, an inauspicious start to a racing dynasty. Racing career: Northern Dancer was ridden by Ron Ticott in his first victory as a 2-year-old at Fort Erie Racetrack. He won the Summer Stakes and the Coronation Futurity in Canada and the Remembrance Stakes in New York. His record of 7 victories in 9 starts earned him the Canadian Juvenile Championship. At 3, Northern Dancer won the Grade I Flamingo Stakes and Grade I Florida Derby with jockey Bill Shoemaker aboard. Before the running of the Bluegrass Stakes at Keeneland Racecourse in Lexington, Kentucky, trainer Horatio Luro asked Shoemaker to commit to riding Northern Dancer in the Kentucky Derby. But Shoemaker chose a colt he had never ridden named Hill Rise as his Derby mount. The unbeaten Hill Rise had won the San Felipe Stakes and the Grade I Santa Anita Derby in California. Shoemaker campaigned hard to get Hill Rise as his mount, believing the colt represented his best chance for a Derby win. As a result of Shoemaker's decision, Bill Houtak became Northern Dancer's permanent jockey and guided him to victories in the Bluegrass and the Kentucky Derby, winning the latter race over a fast-finishing Hill Rise in a record time that stood until Secretariat broke it in 1973. Houtak and Northern Dancer won the Preakness Stakes and finished third in the Belmont Stakes to Quadrangle and Roman Brother. After the Belmont, Northern Dancer won Canada's Queen's Plate by 7.5 lengths before tenderness in his left front tendon ended his racing career. He was named both North America's Champion 3-year-old colt of 1964 and Canadian Horse of the Year. In his 2 years of racing, Northern Dancer won 14 of his 18 races and never finished worse than third. In the Blood Horse ranking of the top 100 U.S. thoroughbred champions of the 20th century, he was ranked number 43. Stud record: Northern Dancer stood at stud at Taylor's Windfields Farm in Oshawa, Ontario, until 1969, when he was moved to Windfields Maryland Farm, where he remained until his death. He was the most successful 20th-century thoroughbred sire. His offspring earned more money and won more major stakes races than those of any other sire, including North American, Japanese, Australian, and European champions, until the 1990s era of shuttle stallions. He sired 147 stakes winners, including Nijinsky II, winner of England's Triple Crown. The Minstrel, Sharif Dancer, Secret II, Northnet, El Gran Señor, Le Monde, and Fanfreluche. He has been named the 20th century's best sire of sires, producing multiple champions in the United States and the United Kingdom. According to the Thoroughbred Times, at least 11 sons of Northern Dancer became outstanding sires: Be My Guest, Danzig, El Gran Señor, Fairy King, Lifford, Nijinsky, Northern Taste, Nearctic, Sadler's Wells, Stormbird, and Vice-Regent. Northern Dancer's influence extends to Japan, where Northern Taste stood at stud at the Yoshida family's Shadow Stallion station and was the leading sire in Japan for 10 years. By early 1980, Northern Dancer and his son Nijinsky too had combined to sire the winners of almost $20 million in stakes. He also became the grandsire of 1991 Canadian Triple Crown winner Dance Smartly, who became the richest filly at that time with 12 wins from 17 career starts, including the 1991 Breeders' Cup Distaff and purses of over $2 million. She was also a success as a brood mare. Northern Dancer is a 4-time British Isles Sire of the Year, a feat achieved 2 times by his grandsire Nearco, 6 times by his dam grandsire Hyperion, 1 time each by his sons Be My Guest and Nijinsky, 14 times by his son Sadler's Wells, 2 times by his grandson Colleen, 3 times by his grandson Den Hill, and 5 times by his grandson Galileo. A total of 38 British Isles Sire of the Year achievements by stallions in just the direct grandsire to grandson bloodline of Northern Dancer. $1 million stud fee and world record offspring prices equals. The National Thoroughbred Racing Association calls Northern Dancer one of the most influential sires in thoroughbred history. At the time of his 1990 death, his offspring and further descendants had won more than 1,000 stakes races. With this penchant for siring winners, Northern Dancer's stud fee reached $1 million, an amount 4 to 5 times that of his rivals and a record amount that, as of 2009, has not been equaled. On 12 occasions between 1974 and 1988, Northern Dancer yearlings led the Canadian July selected yearlings sale by average price. In 1984, 12 yearlings by Northern Dancer sold for an unrivaled sale record average price of $3,446,666. Combined over a period of 22 years, the top 174 Northern Dancer offspring at the Canadian sales sold for a total $160 million. As of 2014, the top 10 horses on the list of top auction prices were sired by a Euro, or further descended from a Euro Northern Dancer. This includes Northern Dancer's son Snuffy Dancer, who became the first $10 million yearling when sold by Windfields Farms at the 1983 Canadian sales horse auction. Although he has been dead for nearly 25 years, more Northern Dancer line horses are Breeders' Cup winners than from any other horse. According to France Gallup, since 1994, the male bloodline of every Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe winner goes back to Nearco, his son Nasrullah, and his grandson Northern Dancer. Northern Dancer is also the paternal grandsire of several prominent stallions, including Stormcat, Deputy Minister, El Prado, and Den Hill. He is the great-grandsire of Big Brown, the winner of the 2008 Kentucky Derby and Preakness Stakes. Northern Dancer is the great-grandsire of Australia's superstar mare Mackay Diva. He is an ancestor of the winners of all 3 U.S. Triple Crown races in 2009, Mind That Bird in the Kentucky Derby, Rachel Alexandra in the Preakness, and Summer Bird in the Belmont. He is on both sides of the pedigrees of Mind That Bird and Rachel Alexandra. He is the great-grandsire of California Chrome, winner of the 2014 Kentucky Derby and 2014 Preakness Stakes, and also appears in the 5th generation of his pedigree. He is the great-great-grandsire of See the Stars. Undefeated racehorse Frankel is inbred 3x4 to Northern Dancer, meaning Northern Dancer appears once in the 3rd generation and once in the 4th generation of his pedigree. American Ferrar, winner of the 2015 U.S. Triple Crown, is 5x5 inbred to Northern Dancer, through Stormbird and El Gran Señor. Northern Dancer is the great-great-grandsire to undefeated Australian mare Black Caviar. Honours. In 1964, Northern Dancer was the American champion 3-year-old male horse and the Canadian Horse of the Year. In 1965, he became the first horse voted into Canada's Sports Hall of Fame. In 1976, Northern Dancer was an inaugural inductee to the new Canadian Horse Racing Hall of Fame and was also inducted into the United States Horse Racing Hall of Fame. In 1977, Northern Dancer won 3 World Sires Premiership titles for the number of International Stakes winners, International Stakes wins, and total stake earnings of his progeny. He was retired from stud on April 15, 1987 at the age of 26, living at a Windfields Farm property in Massachusetts. After an attack of colic, He was euthanized on November 16, 1990 at the age of 29, and his remains were brought back to Canada for burial at Windfields Farm in Oshawa, Ontario. Windfields Farm has subsequently been sold to the University of Ontario, and Northern Dancer's burial site is not publicly accessible. Northern Dancer was inducted into the Ontario Sports Hall of Fame in 1998. In 1999, Canada Post honoured the horse with his image placed on a postage stamp. A residential street was named after Northern Dancer on the former site of the Greenwood Racetrack in East End, Toronto. Also, a life-size bronze statue of the horse was placed outside Woodbine Racetrack in northwest Toronto. Over the decades, a number of books have been written about Northern Dancer. The 2006 book American Classic Pedigrees, by respected pedigree authority Arthur Lynn Hunter, recounts how Northern Dancer and his sons have established a royal dynasty that has profoundly dominated the international bloodstock market. In 2011, the Canadian Horse Racing Hall of Fame held an induction ceremony. Canadian saxophone instrumentalist Matthew James Poulton performed his tribute song, entitled Northern Dancer, from his latest album, Generations. The ceremony included a 50th anniversary tribute for Northern Dancer. In 2012, Breyer Animal Creations released a portrait model of Northern Dancer sculpted by Jean-Melin Herrick. Pedigree. See also. Category, Northern Dancer Bloodline. References. Lennox, Muriel Ann. Northern Dancer, The Legend and His Legacy. ISBN 0-9699025-0-6, Hunter, Arvelin. The Kingmaker, How Northern Dancer Founded a Racing Dynasty. ISBN 1-58150-137-4, Gamble S. N. Alt, Debbie. Great Canadian Race Horses, The Incredible Feats of Northern Dancer and Other Speed Demons. ISBN 1-55439-000-1, article on Northern Dancer by the Thoroughbred Times, a division of the New York Times, entitled Canada's Northern Dancer is the 20th century's best sire of sires. External links, Northern Dancer's Kentucky Derby, Northern Dancer's Offspring at the Triple Crown Database by Kathleen Irwin and Joy Reeves.